You have been abducted as a child.
Mm-hmm. And what I was saying off air was interesting, and it was interesting because it was after I talked to Frank Williams, who people know from the Ride for Missing Children, that I really felt more comfortable about talking about this on the air. But one of the things that I had said was, you had mentioned that you kind of, those who are captive develop a relationship with their captors. And
Almost an affection.
Almost an affection. And I can honestly say that, so my father abducted me, and I really didn't see him much. I was with this other woman who was a teenager pretty much when I was abducted, and I guess she was his mistress. And, she was the person who took care of me.
How old a teenager?
I think she was 18, 17, 18. And
how old were you?
I was 4.
4 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And she was my caretaker. And to say that I grew to love this woman is not, overstating things. I did grow to love her. Now, I was kept in a dark room, motel room, for about 6 months. There was one rescue effort. I don't know how many months into it. I was maybe 3 to 4 months into it. And I remember that a woman ran up to me at the airport and grabbed me. And I looked at her and I said, "You've stolen my mother's shoes." Now, the woman who was coming up to me was my mom.
You didn't recognize her?
I didn't recognize her, but I knew that she was wearing my mother's shoes. My mother had these very memorable shoes that I always loved.
Yeah.
And I remember them. And she reached out to grab me, and I put my hand down and instead grabbed the arm of the woman with whom I had been staying for 4 months, because I felt more comfortable with her because I knew her, even though, my mom was coming up to me. And that haunts me because I ended up leaving with my captor instead of going with my mom. But so I can kind of understand maybe there was something going on in the minds of these girls that they were runaways. Well, at least one of them was a runaway to begin with. So perhaps she had found some sort of solace with this, at least one of the captors, and there are conflicting emotions that go through you. So we don't know this whole story, and it might be a while before we do.
How do they find? I have a few questions I want to throw out about your situation. How did they find you?
At the time, it was not illegal to take your own child. Parental abductions were not illegal at the time. In fact, term parental abduction. So my mom had to hire a private investigator who located me.
Wow.
And they found me in a motel in Miami.
How was it? Did you have a conversation with your mother about what she felt like when you? Because you see it in divorce all the time, where the parents split up, and then the father or the mother, somebody gets another partner, and there's a huge jealousy for the mother if the child begins to have an affection towards the father's new girlfriend or whatever. Ultimately, it's probably better that the kids like the new person if it's going to be this case was really completely different, though. How did your mother feel that you wouldn't take her hand, but you went with the abductor?
I think, afterward, my mom has since passed, but we've, certainly had many conversations about this. I think she understood at the time, what was going on. I think she understood. There was one point when they did bring me to the airport, and my hand got caught in the door of the car while we were going to the airport. And nobody said anything for, I don't know what the ride was to the airport, but nobody said anything until they opened the door and saw my hand having been stuck. And I think she realized at that point that I was just kind of numb and in shock and not knowing what was going on. This
was your mother?
Yeah. So, I think that she understood. I would like to think that she had the piece of understanding. And, for whatever it was worth, I don't think he really cared about the woman to begin with. I think he was just using her to kind of hold me.
And you say that you didn't see him a lot.
No, I only saw him a couple of times. Yeah. It ended up being a total of 6 months. Yeah. So maybe, in the beginning, maybe a total of fewer than a dozen times in that whole experience.
And she was basically the person that you, what happened to you? So it wasn't illegal, so nothing happened to your father?
Nope, nothing happened to him as a result of that. It did have a bearing in, custody battles afterwards, subsequent to that, but it wasn't illegal at the time. And it was interesting because the private investigator who found me, he has since passed on, but his son remembers the case and said that after that case, he would never, ever, ever take another missing child case after that because it was so traumatic
for him.
Him and the law enforcement authorities and everyone else who was involved. It was very traumatic, going through things and trying to find someone who, it's not illegal to have taken them, and then actually kidnapping me back, which is what she had to do to get me back the first time, and that was a failed attempt, and he got me back. So
were they able to, at least in the beginning, were they able to, you were comfortable in the beginning? You did not feel, did you feel you were abducted in the beginning?
Yes, it was very traumatic.
You missed your mother.
I missed my mom. I cried for days. I got very sick. I almost died. I stopped eating, and it was very bad. It was finally, I had almost died, and the woman who was taking care of me said, you've got to let her go outside. You've got to let her get some sunshine or she's going to die. So that was one of the reasons why I loved her, because I knew that if it weren't for her, I would not be here now.
Now, fast forward. I don't know what the situation is with your father. Is he alive today?
He is.
And what did that do for your relationship with him?
Interestingly, until I was 25 and kind of had a falling out with him, I always loved my dad.
Yeah.
I always looked for the good in him. So I think, when you're a child, the one thing about being abducted, and if it's the case of a parental abduction, the families, a lot of people say they're broken families. Following an abduction, the family's not broken, it's shattered.
Yeah.
So, there's all that going on. But to this day, there's a part of me that still feels bad for him. And that's why I can understand these women. Perhaps there was a part of them that felt bad for their captors. And you can't explain the psychology of it because on the surface, it does not appear to be rational. But, you're dealing with people who, and if indeed one of the girls was a runaway, God only knows what's going through her mind. She's looking for someone to kind of take care of her. And I was 4 years old and certainly, very vulnerable, and I loved my dad. He was my dad, and I'm sure anybody out there who has parents who have been convicted of some sort of a crime can relate to the fact that, part of them is your family.
Yeah. Relationship today with your father?
Absolutely none.
None.
Yeah, he's a bad guy.
Because of what happened or things that happened afterwards?
Things that happened in the aftermath of that, I think, and there were other issues going on that led to my kidnapping in the first place. So that, just grew and grew and grew and mushroomed. So I haven't spoken to him for more than 20 years.
Wow. And as I was bringing this up earlier this morning, I was looking and you had a complex look on your face, and it dawned on me that you've been through this, and amazing story. I will take a break. 7:50, come right back.